Can Nic Scourton and Lathan Ransom be day one impact starters for the Panthers? We'll talk about that right here on Locked On Panthers.
You are Locked On Panthers, your daily Carolina Panthers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into another edition of the Locked On Panthers podcast, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, as always, Julian Council, talking Carolina Panthers with you every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and yes, of course, Friday, your team every day. That's our motto here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Thanks for watching the show right here on YouTube and listening wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. Be sure to follow me, Julian Council, over on Twitter and Blue Sky at Julian Council, because I'm back here on Friday answering your weekly Friday mailbag questions. And the best way to get those questions in is by either adding me or DMing me over on Twitter at Julian Council, or adding me over on Blue Sky, also at Julian Council. We're back again, getting to know the Carolina Panthers 2025 draft class. Yesterday on the show, we talked about the three former Florida Gators, Princely Umanmielen, Trevor Etienne, and Cam Jackson, and what impacts they can have in Carolina. And now, of course, two of those guys, Umanmielen and Etienne, did not finish their collegiate careers at Florida. We'll get the Ole Miss and the Georgia perspective of both those guys on tomorrow's show. So the host of Locked On Ole Miss and Locked On Bulldogs. But want to today focus on two more picks from the 2025 draft class, that being the second-round pick from A&M, Nic Scourton, and a fourth-round pick from the Ohio State University, Lathan Ransom. To help me out today is going to be Andrew Stefaniak, who is the host of Locked On Aggies, and then Jay Stevens, the host of Locked On Buckeyes. Both those guys can come on, give us the lowdown on how their careers played out in College Station and Columbus, respectively. And I'll talk about at the end of the show, what could there be, at least what could be the expectations, what they could do as rookies here in 2025 in Carolina. So we'll talk about that here in just a moment. First, starting off with Andrew Stefaniak, the host of Locked On Aggies. All right, back here on Locked On Panthers, and as promised, Andrew Stefaniak, the host of Locked On Aggies, of course, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Check him out on YouTube and wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts, and follow him over on X at Andrew Stefaniak. Andrew, welcome to the show.
I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely, and we have you on because the Panthers on day two decided to be aggressive and to trade up to the 51st overall pick to take Nic Scourton, the edge rusher from Texas A&M, and that was a pick that I absolutely love because Scourton was a first-team All-SEC performer last year. Prior to that, he spent his first 2 years at Purdue. His second season there had 10 sacks, was all Big Ten as well, and he plays a position of need for Carolina. So take me inside to how Nic Scourton came to A&M. I know he's from Bryan, so that's right there in College Station area. So I'm assuming he wanted to come back home, but was there anything more to his transfer from Purdue back home to A&M?
Well, interestingly enough, you're right. I mean, Texas A&M is his backyard, and he ends up going all the way to the Big Ten, heads up to Purdue, and he kind of has poked fun at the Jimbo Fisher staff as to like, hey, could have recruited me. And I guess they weren't after him as hard as he wanted. And he goes to Purdue. And then Mike Elko comes in. And, of course, Mike Elko had something to do with that because he was the DC at A&M for a while before going over to Duke. But, you know, I think that he wanted to come back home and play at home. But, I mean, it was a big addition for the Aggies when it happened because this is the guy that led the Big Ten in sacks that season 2 years ago for the Purdue Boilermakers.
Yeah, I had to double check before recording this that he was from Bryan because I was trying to figure out how in the world is a kid who literally is from like it's Bryan College Station for folks who don't really understand, kind of like Raleigh, Durham. That's the way it is with College Station, that A&M area. Like, how in the world does that guy get out of there? But the fact that he came back home was obviously important for Mike Elko in year one last year in 2024. And when he decided to come back home, like, what were the expectations for Nic Scourton when he came down to Aggie land?
I mean, the SEC and the Big Ten are obviously the two best conferences in college football. It's not really debatable. So when he comes over from Purdue and leads the Big Ten in sacks, you know, we kind of all say to ourselves at Texas A&M, you say he's going to be an elite player for the Aggies. And while the sack number wasn't as good as it was that year in Purdue, he was, everything was thrown at him to stop him, which helped some other guys, the Shamar Turner and Shamar Stewart, who both went high in the draft. So he's a player that I don't think all the focus is going to be on him when he's playing for the Panthers, and he's going to have a season that I'm not saying he's going to have 10 sacks in the NFL, but I'm saying I think you could see him have a year where you go, oh yeah, Nick Scorton can get after the pass rusher.
Okay.
And get after the quarterback, excuse me.
And I love that you bring up the numbers. I know throughout the draft cycle, especially looking at edge rushers, as this was considered such a deep class, not a lot of them had kind of the numbers to back it. I know Michael Williams, who was the second edge rusher to go off the board, he didn't have a big numbers his last year at Georgia. Of course, Abdul Carter had him at Penn State. There was guys like Jalen Walker who didn't really have the massive numbers. James Pierce Jr. kind of took a step back after having a breakout sophomore campaign. But you look at Scourton, while he only had 5 sacks last year, he still had 14 tackles for loss. He still, again, was first team all SEC. And if you look at the PFF grades, it was an 82.8 his sophomore year at Purdue, but then an 80.1 last fall at A&M. So it's not like he took any sort of step back. And when, again, you're a first team all SEC performer in your only year in the league, you're a pretty doggone good football player. So why do you think at least the sack production went down? Because I've talked to Kyle Krabs, who was Locked On Dolphins and Locked On NFL Scouting. He talked about the scheme that Elko runs. Maybe it was a part of that. What did you see that you think probably led to them not having the kind of 10 sack total we saw that year at Purdue?
Schematically, I do agree with you. I think that that is a solid take. I do think that hurt his production sack-wise a little bit. And I talked about that when he came over. I said the way Elko runs his defense, and obviously he's not fully running the show on defense. He's going to do so more this year, but it's still accents of his defensive concepts. And you're right. I think schematically, I said it, I think he's going to have less sacks than he did at Purdue, but he's going to have the same kind of impact on the game, which is what happened. Like you said, 5 sacks, but also a first-team All-SEC performer, obviously a second-round draft pick. The PFF grade only went down about 2 points. So, I think schematically that was part of it. But once again, I just think that there was a lot more attention on him than that year at Purdue. I think that they were throwing more at him, and I think it's a mixture of the schematic part of it, and I just think Nick Scorton became a household name, and we have to stop Nick Scorton.
Yeah, and I go back to the week 1 game against Notre Dame there in College Station where, man, like Notre Dame had some missing offensive linemen, like their left tackle was done for the season. He eventually did come back because the season was so long for them. And I was thinking, Scourton, Shamar, both of them, like those guys are about to eat that evening. And unfortunately, things not work out for the Ags that night. But overall, for the season, like Nick Scourton, he was a dude. And last question for you, what do you believe he's bringing to Carolina and what he can potentially project to be as his career plays out here?
Well, I've said this many times when folks ask me about Nick Scorton. I think that he is going to be one of the most underrated second-round picks that we see in this year's draft. I mean, he was a guy discussed as a top 15 pick at one point, before the season starts. And
very true.
The sack production drops a little bit for the reasons you and I just discussed. I think that played a huge role in that. He's still a football player that will, in year 1, have a massive effect in the NFL. For a Panthers team trying to, get back to that level of success that we haven't seen since, Newton's prime. But I think that you're going to see Nick Scorton in year 1 as a rookie have a big impact. He's a player that I think a lot of teams are going to be really upset that they let him slip all the way down to where he did in that second round.
Love to hear that. And he's a guy who I've read could be like a 3-down player as well, not just going to be that 3rd-down pass rusher. So that ability that he's also bringing, I'm excited to see what Nick Scorton is able to do. And I appreciate you, Andrew. Check him out over on X at Andrew Stefaniak. He is the host of Locked On Aggies. Again, check him out on YouTube and wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. Appreciate you joining the show. And hey, the Ags trying to make the college. We'll see if they're going to make regionals with baseball. It's been an up and down season. So check out all he's got to say, I'm sure, about Michael Early's first year as the Aggies head baseball coach. But again, appreciate you coming on the show, man.
Yep. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. We'll take a quick pause and come back here and talk about the Panthers' 4th round pick, Lathan Ransom, with the host of Locked On Buckeyes. The NBA playoffs are in full swing, and every night delivers highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and can't-miss moments. Whether it's a game-winning shot or a breakout player, there's never been a better time to get in on the action. FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before tip-off and live with player props, performance trends, and same-game parlays. Fans have more ways than ever to play smart and win big. If you think Steph Curry is going to heat up, why not back it up with a same-game parlay? New to FanDuel, it's the perfect time to sign up. Head to FanDuel.com and place your first $5 bet. If it wins, you'll get $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, back here on Locked On Panthers. Jay Stevens, he is the host of Locked On Buckeyes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Check him out over on YouTube and wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. And, of course, follow him on social also at jstevens07. That's PH, not no V in there, PH. So make sure you spell Stevens right. Jay, good to have you back on the show, man. Been a couple of years. Last time I think we talked was when the Panthers trying to figure out where they're going to take Bryce Young or CJ Stroud. And as we know, Stroud went down to Houston. There was some conversations been happening since then about that decision, but I think after the last 9 games of last season, Panther fans feeling pretty good, or at least better, about the decision they made a couple of years ago.
Better, but man, it would be wild if the Panthers got Stroud. He was clearly the better quarterback. I understand why they made the pick. I don't agree with why they made that pick, but yeah, it was a couple of years ago, man. It's wild to think about how much time has gone by in just life in general since that point in time till now. While they didn't pick Stroud, they did get a good guy in Lathan Ransom.
Yeah, they did get a good guy in Lathan Ransom a couple of years later now here in 2025. The fourth-round pick, 122nd overall out of the Ohio State University, fresh off of a national championship. And tell me about Lathan Ransom, since reading up more on him, because I watched Ohio State last year, as everybody did. And, I'll tell you this. Like, most of the time when I'm watching the Buckeyes, they got to be playing Michigan or Penn State. Other than that, I'm just not going to waste my time watching them beat up on teams like, Indiana, who was good this year, but that was a blowout, which was predictable. Like, when they're beating the hell out of Maryland, I'm all good. I'm showing up for like 2 or 3 Buckeye games a year. And when you're watching him, like, Lathan Ransom was a guy who stood out, even though he was in a secondary with Caleb Downs, who a lot of people talked about ad nauseum last year for good reasons. As we'll see this time next year, he'll be a top 5 pick. But tell me about Lathan Ransom and what he was able to achieve at Ohio State, what kind of player he is.
He's a great football player. And I'm not a guy that's going to throw that word out there just to say it, just to fill some space. He is literally a great football player. He was one of those guys that played multiple safety spots at Ohio State. They run a 3-safety system, 2 deep safety. They call their nickel corner a cover safety because he will rotate back and forth, try to confuse the offense. But Lathan Ransom is a thumper, man. If you watch the big games, I'm sure you saw some of the times he played against Tennessee and some of those plays he made against Oregon. Homie is a thumper. He's going to come down in the box and try to break your helmet, just like he broke Tennessee's quarterback's helmet this past year. But he's also a guy that I think is sneakily underrated in coverage. There was a time, this was a couple years ago now, he was playing Michigan State. I believe the game was on the road. He was at 1 hash mark. He jetted back about 30 to 40 yards to retreat when he saw where the ball was going to go, tracked that thing down and got the interception. And he's known for his run-stopping ability, being a guy that can play in the box or come down from 15 yards away to stop at the line of scrimmage. But I think his coverage is very underrated. And that's one thing I think at the next level he's going to be able to tap into and make even better, is because he's a pro. He doesn't have to worry about all the other outside influences about being a college athlete. You're a pro. He can hone in on making that part of his game a whole lot better.
I'm curious, was he underrated last year in that Ohio State defense, considering the fact, he was a 3rd-team AP All-American, his 1st-team All-Big Ten, but I did mention, like, Caleb Downs. Like, there's always talk about him, and there's stuff about what Jack Sawyer did last year, what JTT did last year, and that it just felt like Ransom is like a dude who's been around, he made all those plays, but didn't seem like he got the kind of recognition that I thought a player who was obviously, 3rd-team All-American AP, like, obviously he got the recognition, but did he get talked about as much as you think he probably deserved to?
Oh, absolutely not. No, it's weird because he's been kind of like that his entire career. He'll thump you. He's been he was a solid player. Unfortunately for him, he did have a couple injuries that knocked him out for the entire year. I believe it was a 2021 Rose Bowl, broke his leg. and then maybe the 2022 Rose Bowl, 2021 season. They had another injury a couple years later that knocked him out for the entire year. So you look at a guy that has a couple season-ending injuries during his Ohio State career. Caleb Downs comes in, and Lathan Ransom is just doing what he's always done. He's been consistent. It's kind of like a really good left tackle. You don't really talk about him because they don't make mistakes. But that's Lathan Ransom. You don't really talk about him because he's not out here making mistakes. He's not blowing coverage. He's not taking bad angles on run plays to stop the run. His pursuit's always really good. He's not making mistakes, so he was underrated. Third-team All-American is great, but a lot of people will marvel at Caleb Downs. I get it. He's a better football player. But Lathan Ransom is not bad. He's just next to a guy that's better than him.
Yeah, and especially considering like all that it took for Ohio State to get Caleb Downs after Nick Saban retired after the season back in 2023, that probably led to it. And again, he's a good player, but you brought up the injury issues that he had during his time at Ohio State. He had the gruesome leg injury. You talked about that in the Rose Bowl. He had the Liz Frank injury that ended his 2023 season early. And if you just want to add into like when he first gets on campus, there's a global pandemic going around, and he has no idea if he was even going to play in 2020 as the Big Ten had decided, nah, we're not going to play. But then, okay, fine, we'll play like 6 games. It worked out for Ohio State as they did get to the national title game. Didn't work out once they played Alabama that year, but still, like, it worked out to that. So for him, like, just the injury issues, like, I mean, being a 4th-round pick, clearly the Panthers liked him because that's still pretty early for a guy who's had those kind of injuries. Is that any sort of concern, like his durability moving forward? Or are you looking at more so like he played 56 games, so clearly he played enough to where, all right, this is a guy that you can maybe depend on moving forward?
No, I think it's a concern there.
Okay.
I think you have to take it and be very serious about it, because you're not looking at a guy that had an injury in high school as sophomore year and then played 5 years of complete seasons. All of a sudden had another injury. No, 2021 season, New Year's Day in 2022, broke his leg. You mentioned it a couple years later in 23, had another really severe injury. So as great as as he is as a football player, you have to take that into account, because I want to make sure my money is going to the right player if they have these concerns. Now, if his medicals checked out, great. I don't think he would have bad medicals and be drafted where he did. I don't think that at all.
Yeah.
But also, if he didn't have those injuries, he's probably a 2nd-round pick. I do think that hurt him a little bit, but while it hurt him, you still have to take that into account and realize, is he okay? Is that why he fell? While his medicals may have checked out, will he get hurt again? These are questions in my head. And if they're in my head, I guarantee they're in the people that are getting ready to extend a very expensive contract out to this young man very soon, if they haven't already. I don't know if he's been signed. I have no idea.
Yeah.
But
I don't believe he's been signed from anything I've seen. I'm now ask you this too, like, because you talk about his play style. He's a thumper. Do you think that maybe kind of attributes to maybe the questions of durability just based off of that? I mean, I know the leg one that happens, like that's always one of those weird injuries that just happen. Like that's not really on the player, but I'm just curious. Do you think his play style maybe could like attribute to some of these injuries?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
I mean, let's just say like offensive or defensive lineman. If you have one serious injury, then all of a sudden you play a year and a half, and then you have another serious injury. It's kind of the same thing. It's just that position you're getting hit harder every single play, where Lathan Ransom, he may not have a hard hit play for a quarter and a half because just his position is asking different demands of his body. So I would say, yeah, I would.
Okay. And I appreciate the honesty. And I'll get you out on this. Looking at Lathan Ransom, the fact that he was a starter at Ohio State the last couple of years, helped him win a national championship, was an AP All-American, a first-team All-Big Ten last year. And you believe that had he not had those injuries, that he is a guy who could have been a 2nd-round pick in this draft. And clearly the medicals were good enough for Carolina to take him there early on day 3 of the draft last month. When you look at him, do you think he can come in and be an immediate contributor? Because you talk about you think he's underrated as far as coverage goes, but he can certainly help you when stopping the run. And this is a team that gave up 3,000 yards rushing last year. So I'm just curious, like, what kind of role do you see he could play day 1? And then what do you think he can develop into as he continues his career in the NFL?
Yes, he could be an immediate contributor on special teams. I am not going to say he'll be an immediate starter. I also am saying this knowing my very limited knowledge of the Panthers depth chart. I am not going to say, well, I know it very well. Like I know Ohio State, I don't.
Mhm.
But I do know special teams is where he can come in. It's what he get at Ohio State. He had to come in and make his mark on special teams before getting that starting role on Ohio State defense. The same thing's going to happen in Carolina. And I believe he can take that same mindset. Just do whatever it takes. Get out there, make a name for yourself. First, make the 53-man roster, and then find your role. Whatever the coach needs you to do, go out there and do it consistently. And that's his path to getting on the field as a starter. Because while there are injury concerns, you can make those concerns leave somebody's head by consistently doing everything correctly and by consistently being a great team player. And I think he can do just that.
Okay, I love it. I mean, a guy who had to battle adversity throughout his career in Columbus ended up being a national champion, and a guy who can come in, be a thumper, and maybe a contributor immediately on special teams. Lathan Ransom, the 4th-round pick from the Ohio State. Jay Stevens, the host of Locked On Buckeyes, covering, again, the Ohio State University. Jay, appreciate your time as always. Check him out on YouTube. Check him out over where you listen to your favorite podcasts and over on social media at JStevens07. That's PH, not V. No V in there. So spell his name right. Jay, appreciate you, man.
Really enjoyed it, Julian. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Take a quick pause, and I'll come back here and I'll break down what Nic Scourton and Lathan Ransom could do for Carolina in 2025. Say goodbye to sticky notes, scribbled plans on the fridge, and the overlapping calendar invites. The Skylight Calendar is here to bring clarity to the chaos and help families stay organized without the stress. This sleek digital display syncs with your existing calendars, Google, Apple, Outlook, and more, making it simple to track appointments, practices, dinners, and reminders all in one easy-to-see place. No longer will big plans be missed out because they were buried in a digital calendar or not written down at all. Right now, Skylight is offering our listeners $30 off their 15-inch calendars by going to skylightcal.com/NFL. Go to skylightcal.com/NFL for $30 off your 15-inch calendar. That's skylightcal.com/NFL. Thanks again to Andrew Stefaniak, the host of Locked On Aggies, and Jay Stevens, the host of Locked On Buckeyes. I know Jay's audio is a little choppy there, so hopefully you guys are able to make it through. He still had plenty of good stuff to say about Lathan Ransom, the 4th-round pick from the Ohio State University, and talking about Lathan Ransom and Nic Scourton, what they could do as rookies here in Carolina. I'm thinking, just based off of what they have at edge rusher right now, that Scourton is going to get a chance to come in and compete to be a starter. Now, we know from what Mike Kay told us that just historically, and that's 3 seasons as a DC, Ejiro Evero has not had to play a lot of rookies, at least willingly. It comes down to whether there's been injuries, and they got to win those spots. Now, it's still a small sample size. I don't know if I would say that like he won't play a rookie at all, but looking at what they have at edge rusher right now, still Jadeveon Clowney, who's on the roster, questions about his future in Carolina, whether he'll even be on the roster come the beginning of the season later on in September. You got, of course, you got Pat Jones II coming back. Also have DJ Wonnum coming back. And if he's healthy, I look at him certainly as a guy who should be a starter, but how much is he going to help you when stopping the run this upcoming season? Princely Uman-Mielen, who was drafted in the 3rd round. We'll talk more about him tomorrow. We'll talk about him yesterday on the show. Is he going to be anything other than just a 3rd down guy? So just looking at it, you look at Nic Scourton, him and Jadeveon Clowney, both of those guys probably are the body types who could play all 3 downs and be there on the early downs for Carolina at that edge rusher spot. So I think that's going to allow Nic Scourton to come in and to have a pretty big impact. And he's somebody who we talked about, Andrew, heading into the season, there was 1st-round talk about him. He may not have had the double-digit sack total like he had in 2023 in his final season at Purdue, but he still had a same amount of tackles for loss, still was able to have 5 sacks at the very least. His PFF grade did not go down. I'm not thinking like teams are really looking at the PFF grade, but it's telling you that he did not really play any worse than he played the year prior, just a 2 points below that. And what is that really when you're watching the film? Like, he still made a ton of plays and was a guy that teams were concerned about this past year in the SEC. And he was a 1st-team All-SEC performer as a junior at A&M in a scheme where they weren't all that aggressive. So I'm not worried about Nic Scourton and him potentially producing in Carolina. Is he going to be a consistent double-digit sack guy? I don't know, but I do think that he will give them more than what they've gotten recently. And I think he's a better prospect than all the other guys on the roster at this point in time. So I'm excited to see what he can do as a rookie here in 2025, and do think that he's going to be a key piece of this defense for years to come. Now, looking at Lathan Ransom, I really appreciate Jay's honesty about the injuries with the broken leg in the Rose Bowl, and also with the Liz Frank injury in 2023. He had to play 5 seasons probably because of those injuries, but he came back. He was able to play 56 games. He started 37 of them. So this is not a guy who does not necessarily have any durability at all. And I think the least amount of games he ever played in the season, not counting the pandemic year in 2020, was 9 games in 2023. So he played a good amount even in the years where he got injured. One of them is at the end of the year. The other one is at, of course, the end of the year as well, but not at the very last game of the season. So he can come in, according to Jay, and be someone who can be a thumper and help play special teams. And quite honestly, if you're a day 3 pick, now being in the 4th round, that helps your case a lot more than if you were a 6th-round pick. You're going to have to come in and make the team primarily based off of special teams. Now, looking at the depth chart here, which Jay's probably not super privy to, there is an opportunity to get on the field as a safety. But I found it to be very intriguing that, speaking about how Ohio State uses their safeties, that they have 3 of them, and one of them kind of is that nickel guy. It was Lathan Ransom coming in more so to compete with Shaw Smith-Wade, the 5th rounder from Washington State from a year ago, or is he actually going to play more back in coverage? It sounds like to me, if he's a thumper and he played a lot of that nickel role back at Ohio State, that's how Carolina may be viewing him. And I've seen some people not love the pick because they don't think that he's like a true safety for them, doesn't have kind of that size that you would be looking for a guy who maybe is going to play more of a free, more in space than what you're going to be asking Teron Merrick, the free agent who comes over from Las Vegas to play for Carolina. He's going to be more of a box safety for them this upcoming season, I'm sure, in years to come as well. So we'll see what the expectation is, whether he's going to play more of a nickel, if he will be kind of a backup to Merrick, if he does get a chance to be a starter this upcoming season. But special teams, like that will be probably the big thing you're going to be asking from him this upcoming year. But he was an All-American, was first team All Big Ten next to an extremely talented player, Caleb Downs, who, I mean, looking ahead to next year in the NFL draft, as long as everything works out, like that guy's going to be a top 5 pick, maybe top 10 at worst, but top 5 pick. That's how good he is. And Ransom's right there next to him, also playing at an All-American level, helping Ohio State win a national championship this past season there in Columbus. So Nic Scourton and Lathan Ransom, both those guys I look at as pieces that are going to help the Panthers moving forward defensively, and really big as far as like building depth, especially with Ransom and Scourton. You can look at that as well, but I think the expectations for Scourton will be a lot higher as a rookie than they will for the other guys drafted behind him. Of course, looking on the offensive side of the ball, Otero McMillan, high expectations. He and Nick Scourton are going to have to wear the brunt of those this upcoming season as rookies, where they're going to have to come in, make some plays to help out Carolina and raise the ceiling of this team moving forward. But that's going to wrap up this edition of the Locked On Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Hosted by yours truly, Julian Council. Again, y'all subscribe or follow the show for free over on YouTube, wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. And be sure to follow me, Julian Council, over on Twitter and Blue Sky at Julian Council, where I'm back on Friday answering your weekly Friday mailbag questions. All you got to do is either at me or DM me over on Twitter at Julian Council, or at me over on Blue Sky at Julian Council to get your questions in for this week's edition of the weekly Friday mailbag right here on Locked On Panthers. In the meantime, be safe, be happy, be whole. As always, keep pounding. And coming up on Wednesday's show, we'll look at the Ole Miss and Georgia perspectives of Princely Umanmielen and Trevor Etienne's careers in college, and also talk to the host of Locked On Buffs about Jimmy Horn Jr. All that coming up here on Wednesday on Locked On Panthers.